Hey everyone, this is Ian McHenry from Beyond Pricing, bringing you episode 3 of This Week in Airbnb and Beyond. We've made it 3 episodes, and it's a great week for news around Airbnb. This week we have a couple of guests, one returning. Everyone liked Randy from Properly so much, we've asked him back to weigh in on this week's news. Randy, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back.
Yep, thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Justin from AE Hospitality in Los Angeles, who also used to be at Evolution Hospitality on the hotel side. So he's going to lend us some pretty unique perspectives from both sides of the aisle. Justin, how are you doing?
Great, Ian. Thank you for having me.
Yep, thank you guys so much.
It's also nice to speak with Randy.
Yep, definitely. Well, so this week, and just so everybody knows here, this week in Airbnb, it's a news roundtable. We like to talk about all of the latest news around Airbnb, vacation rentals, home sharing, and that whole space. And we invite experts from the field to come here and lend their perspectives and just and chat about what's going on. If you guys are listening live, feel free to shoot across questions, and we'll be sure to answer those. So let's jump right in. One of the bigger pieces of news this week, and I think it's partially because they got it on video, was another one of these sort of, look at how terrible guests are on Airbnb. You never know what they're going to do to your place. And this seems like an ongoing theme with the press. In this case, I think it was in San Francisco. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. There was a guest, and she was caught on video going into a locked room which had the host's valuables in there, and they ran off with $35,000 worth of stuff from it's kind of known in the Airbnb space as the host closet. I think vacation rentals have the same idea for places where people actually live there. They often have like a separate closet where they just lock it up and put all of their personal items there that they don't want bothered. And then there's a couple other things coming out. There was another piece in SF Gate about an Airbnb user staying in a Paris home that was a nightmare and it was dirty and all these sorts of things. Main question here for you guys, and I'll start with Randy on this. Why do you think the press continues to hammer on this? Like, what's the driver behind that? Why do you think this is a constant story for them?
I think it's just typical press. They're going to pick up the most sensational, and that's what sells views and clicks and publications. I mean, that's been the case for forever. I think no one really wants to report about the users that are having, whether the guests or hosts having a great experience. And unfortunately, it's just like, I feel like it's a lot like Yelp, where the vocal minority gets picked up, and there's if you've had a great experience, how many people ever really go back and give kudos for an awesome experience? It's just you have a great experience and you go on your way. But when there's an axe to grind or someone's unhappy, it's anger fuels a lot of that, and I think the press just loves it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of question for me too is, it seems that it's just such an unknown for most people, right? Where Uber, Airbnb, all of these new ways of traveling, of staying places, it's kind of the unknown, and when it doesn't, they seem to pick up on that more. Justin, you have experience in hotels, and I always think, why isn't there press about? You ran at Evolution Hospitality. You guys had brands like Marriott and Hilton that you were managing for, and obviously you weren't doing sort of low-end motels and whatnot. But why isn't there press about the people that trashed motels? Oh, still got
No,
you, Justin?
I completely understand. Yeah, I completely. Completely understand what you're saying, Ian. Airbnb is such a hot topic right now that it just seems that vacation rentals and shared economy with different apartments and houses keeps coming up. It's a hot topic right now. Whereas with hotels, it's everybody seems to know what they're going to get,
Mm.
and so therefore it's not sensational at all and not coming up in the media. You'll see bad reviews on just like you'll see reviews on vacation rentals. It's just not sensational enough, like Randy was saying, to come out in the media.
Unless it's a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Did we hear how Mariah Carey did? I guess that's another piece of news. Mariah Carey stayed at a really fancy Malibu Airbnb, and that got on. Did Mariah Carey trash the place?
Did she?
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that, and it was pretty popular out here because it was local.
Yeah. But no, Randy, she didn't trash the place. That was a that was a rhetorical question.
Oh. If she had, it would have been much bigger news.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was kind of another little interesting piece of news. It's it's a nice parallel, right? And I don't know if Airbnb's press folks and PR folks were good enough or were good at doing that, but it's kind of this balance, right? You have all this news about these hovels and whatnot that people get put up in. At the same time, you have news about Mariah Carey staying at a $30 million mansion that was on Airbnb.
I think
exactly.
Sorry, go on, Justin.
Thank you, Randy. There's just so many more options and variety with the Airbnb and vacation rental outlet. There, as you were saying, Ian, there's multi-million-dollar homes that you can stay in, and there's hovels. And there's just so much more of a variety, but it's far less regulated than a hotel where you get the front desk and the hotel security and the key card and you have your pool. And it's very one note, but some people like that and know what they're going to get when they walk in, and that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is that part of the problem here? Is that, and Randy, we've talked about this before too, is about setting expectations. That it's funny to talk about, Airbnbs and vacation rentals as one thing. Somebody said, oh, I stayed in Airbnb and I had a terrible experience. I'll never do that again. You don't hear, hey, someone that unknowingly booked a one-star motel, in the bad part of town say, hey, I stayed at a hotel. Man, that was a terrible experience. I'm never staying at a hotel again.
Right. I think it goes back to the sensational. You look at how many listings and bookings are going through Airbnb. The sheer volume of it is crazy. There's the thing I kind of harken back to is when I was at eBay. Every once in a while you'd have some news piece about a sale that had gone bad on eBay, or someone had bought a fraudulent item, or it wasn't what they expected. And we get press like that all the time, very similar to Airbnb. And Airbnb's response is over the millions and millions and millions and millions of listings and successful transactions. 1/100th of 1% of a time, something might not work, right? Or it might not be as described. And I think if you're talking about that kind of batting average, the same goes true for any kind of marketplace, whether it's Airbnb or eBay. There's always going to be bad apples and bad experiences. I just think, again, the press loves this stuff, particularly because it's so new. Everyone's sort of operating out of fear because they just don't quite understand it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too where they come, where the guests come from. And one of the questions I have, like for you, Justin, is we talk about setting expectations for guests too, and it seems like there's not as that perhaps Airbnb doesn't right now educate guests enough on, hey, this is what you're getting. Like, this is the experience. Here's how to be a good guest. Here's what to expect. Homes, somebody might actually live there, which means their closets might actually have clothes in it. All these things would be really surprising to someone expecting a hotel experience. And I know, I'm sure there's properties you have too, Justin, where it's the opposite. It's a full-time vacation rental, and it feels a lot more like a hotel in that sense, that it might be not have as many of the effects of the owner there. But do you notice, Justin, here's the question, do you notice a difference in guests coming from different channels, from HomeAway versus from Airbnb versus from Booking.com, and what their expectations are?
Absolutely. I think for the most part, you really can tell a difference depending on which OTA they're coming from. For example, we've been utilizing, and we're one of the first companies to in Los Angeles to really utilize Booking.com. And since then, Booking.com has grown exponentially in the amount of vacation rentals that are being advertised through there, and their subsidiaries like villas.com. I think the biggest difference with Booking.com is it does have such a hotel feel. People relate with Booking.com and hotels. So the guests that are booking vacation rentals a lot of the time on Booking.com, some of them are expecting a hotel. We have countless guests on a yearly basis that don't realize until the day of that they're not staying in a hotel, no matter how many times we try to reach out to them prior to their arrival. The notifications that we send at time of booking, informing them and educating them that it is not a hotel that they're staying in, that they're staying in a condo or a house, and that there is no front desk. So I definitely think there's a big difference between Booking.com guests. Plus, there's a much more international database of guests coming from all over the world to our parts in Los Angeles that are unfamiliar with the process or not paying attention to the correspondence that they're getting. Whereas with HomeAway and Airbnb, there's almost a constant communication. I used an apartment on Airbnb when I was in San Francisco earlier this year, and he responded within seconds with a few questions that I had. And I just think that's such a big difference from the Booking.com guest that book and wait for their arrival.
Yeah. Do you guys put all of your properties on Booking.com, or are there certain properties where you say, hey, this probably wouldn't be the best property for someone that's like that, right? That might be expecting a hotel.
Absolutely. We have the majority of our properties on Booking.com, but I do limit a few properties. I only advertise them for certain periods of time, or I don't advertise them at all due to the type of property it is, or the type of relationship we have with that homeowner.
Oh, interesting. Expand on that. What kind of homeowners would you steer away from listing their property on Booking.com?
Well, there's two different examples that I can give you. One is the homeowner where we might manage their property and the HOA frowns upon short-term rentals.
Yep.
In that case, we wouldn't blow it up on Booking.com with guests that aren't as familiar with that type of property, and we're unable to educate them as much. Yep. And then there's also the owner who is very, very concerned about their property and the type of guests that we're bringing into their property, and would rather suffer on the revenue generated in order to make sure that the guests staying in their property are well vetted.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to hear that perspective. I forget, I think, Randy, you weren't on it, but on episode, it might have been 2, we had Jeffrey Massoud, I'm saying it wrong, from Zotelia, which is based out there in France. And over there, almost everyone was on Instant Book and on channels like Booking.com, and even some on Expedia, where the owners just you don't have the way to sort of vet the guests the same way that you do on those platforms that have back and forth communication channels like HomeAway and Airbnb. And he mentioned everybody on their platform kind of any of those owners had to be okay with just sort of having those instant bookings and not being able to vet those guests.
Yeah,
so that's interesting.
I did listen to that episode, and he made some great points as well. And I think it's important to know that the competition out there does have, the majority of the competition out there does have Instant Book available. And I was just at a HomeAway small seminar the other day in Newport Beach, and they said, based off their statistics, the number one guest requirement or request when searching for a vacation rental, it used to be a few years ago to have great pictures of the property and as many pictures as possible. But pictures is all the way down to number 9, and the number one request by guests is online bookability, immediate booking. So it's changed in a few years quite dramatically.
Yeah, definitely, and it sounds like HomeAway is making that move, however painful it might be for property managers that are used to kind of the old way, and for our listeners that are only on Airbnb and are only familiar with online booking, it probably comes as a shock. But it used to be mostly that sites like HomeAway were kind of classified sites. They would show you all the information about the property, but then they would give you the contact details for completing the booking directly with the owner or with the property manager. And there's been it sounds like the data from HomeAway is saying is a significant shift in what the guests want. And so that property owners and managers kind of need to get on the bus to start offering what the guests actually want when it comes to booking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Related to that, actually, interesting question about that. Since we're trying to do kind of a hotel comparison theme here this week, Justin, at some of the hotels where you guys managed them, what percent? Do you have any idea what percent of bookings would come through walk-ins, through people calling that weren't actually online bookings? I know you guys probably, since you had a bunch in Anaheim, had a lot of groups and packages and stuff like that. But was there a decent number that would actually do the old school way of just calling or walking in?
It's funny that you bring that up, Ian. Now, it has been a couple years since I was working for Evolution, but it's crazy how drastically it changed over the last few years that I was there. We had a specific call center that took inbound calls for all of the properties in the portfolio.
Yep.
And that call center, as of next month, will know. It's been there for over 15 years, that call center, and from what I heard, next month they're they're closing down the call center and bringing everything in-house for all of the hotels.
Oh, interesting.
So what you can see from that perspective is that less and less people in the hotel industry need to talk to somebody on the phone prior to making your booking. Yeah. Everything's going through Hotel Tonight or Expedia, Booking.com, and if not, it's going through in-house reservations or the front desk.
Yep. And so then it switches over to, instead of these big call centers, for the few people that are still calling in to book, it just goes straight through to the front desk. Is that right? Exactly.
It's going straight through to the front desk, or if not to the front desk, the back house. Either way, it's definitely inside the hotel and not an exterior call center.
Yep. Well, speaking of hotels, a couple interesting segments this week coming out of New York. There was a PBS NewsHour special on what's going on in New York, and what the latest in regulation is there. And one of I think kind of the interesting headline feature there is they're talking to one of the heads of, I think it was the New York Hotel Group or something that represents all the hotel owners there. And it seems like the hotels in New York are increasingly having issues with Airbnb, and might be the impetus behind a lot of this regulation there. Randy, what do you think about that? Do you think there's any one person behind the efforts to curtail short-term rentals in New York? Oh, Randy, having a little trouble hearing you. Hey, Randy, we might want to check your microphone real quick there. Well, Justin, there's similar stuff in you came from hotels, and I assume you still have contacts with your hotel brethren. Do you think some of the stuff in LA with Santa Monica recently saying you can't do short-term rentals, do you think that's driven more by residents worried about affordable housing, or do you think it's more from the hotel lobby? How do you think hotels are viewing this, and how much are they talking to their their city councilors about this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ian. And I believe maybe Los Angeles is a little different than New York. But I think from what I've heard speaking to some of the city council members recently, it is a big topic of discussion in Los Angeles right now. But I think it's less from the hotels. Hotels are doing great from all statistics that I've seen in Los Angeles. And I haven't heard any bad news coming from the hotels. It is coming, however, from residents who are complaining about the cost of living, especially in Santa Monica, which unfortunately recently banned short-term rentals starting September 1st of this year. So it's a big hit. There was over 1,500 vacation rentals in Santa Monica, and Santa Monica grew up with vacation rentals and short-term rentals and corporate housing.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate to see it go, but it has a lot to do with complaints about the cost of living. And from what I've heard from city council members, nothing to do with hotels in Los Angeles.
That's interesting. What do you think about that? So in places like Miami, and I think you guys used to have some properties there, you still do, they've kind of said, well, hey, the tourist area is the tourist area, vacation rentals, condos, and that stuff are okay here, but we'll regulate it more so and limit it kind of in the neighborhood and residential areas. What do you think that's something that could work for Santa Monica, for a beach town like Santa Monica?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And the owner of my company, AE Hospitality, Ari, and another owner, Sebastian, of Globe Homes and Condos, work closely together, and they started the Los Angeles Short-Term Rental Alliance, or otherwise known as LOSTRA. And they started it a couple of years ago for the same reason, to help bring regulation to short-term rentals. Unfortunately, there's people not paying their TOT, and people that don't professionally manage their property and don't vet the guest. And we're trying to bring regulation. We think we can all get along in Los Angeles and be able to be a benefit for the city and bring in millions of dollars in tax revenue. At the same time, professionally manage these properties in neighborhoods where it's acceptable.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think other cities too have had their resolution has been, hey, your place needs to be professionally managed. And that way you ensure there's somebody accountable for it, somebody who's always reachable if there's any issues and things like that. Obviously good for your line of business, but probably also good for for the neighborhoods as well.
Absolutely. And Anaheim just went that route. They recently changed their laws in 2014, and recently started enforcing it. But they're making property owners join a short-term rental program, and that short-term rental program, they have to show proof of ownership and pay a $250 annual fee, and pay the 15% TOT. But with that, you also have to do an inspection prior to renting your property out, and it's a win-win for everybody. People have been doing vacation rentals in Anaheim for a while because of the Disneyland appeal and the convention center there. So why not make some money for the city and have it professionally managed as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, do you think that do you think a lot of the regulation right now, Justin, is related to the rise of sort of, people just effectively subletting and their places as short-term rentals, and do you think that's the new, or is it because it's gotten so much bigger so quickly? Because you guys have been there for almost a decade, and vacation rentals have been in Santa Monica, and like you said, Anaheim forever. Do you think it's this kind of proliferation that's causing the renewed focus on it from cities and regulators?
Absolutely. I think Airbnb has a big part to do with that, and making vacation rentals in the shared economy more accessible, almost more cool, if you will. And therefore, I just think it's brought so much more attention to vacation rentals, as you said, that has been around forever. Right. How long have they been doing vacation rentals in Hawaii? And ironically, we don't hear any guests, any Airbnb stories or bad stories about vacation rentals in Hawaii.
Right.
It's been going on forever, and it's just recently sensationalized by Airbnb and kind of that cool thing to do, that home away from home.
Right. Yep. No, absolutely. Randy, we got you back here. Justin was just mentioning, it seems like a lot of the impetus behind the regulation in LA has not actually been so much from hotels, because they're doing pretty well, and it's more about people worried about affordability of housing and whatnot. What about New York? How much, from what you've heard and what you've read and what you see, how much of it is people worried about taking units off of the market versus hotels worried about their margins being affected?
Well, at first, I don't really buy the hotels' argument that their margins are being affected. The amount of demand that hotels still get, I don't, and maybe I'm completely wrong, I don't see Airbnb impacting it that much. One of the things that I've heard that they're saying, well, they've had to drive their prices down. One of the things recently in the last 6 months or so is the euro has been weak.
Right.
So that's going to drive down a lot of their international demand. So I just don't buy the hotels. I don't think Airbnb is really impacting that.
Yeah. So that's real quick, Justin. I'm going to mute you because we're getting a little bit of feedback here. So Randy, here's the question though. Is Airbnb true? Are people staying at Airbnbs all people who would have just been crashing on their friend's couch? Otherwise, is this truly new demand, or would they have stayed at hotels if Airbnbs weren't there?
I think it's a blend, but I think it's most of these folks are folks that probably would not have stayed at a hotel, and I think or they have different needs. For example, folks with children. A hotel, if you bring a couple kids, one bedroom hotel room gets awfully stuffy.
Yeah.
Having kids myself, so I don't think it's the same guest that the hotels are after anyway. I think it's younger. I think these are folks that also want an experience in a neighborhood where there is no hotel density. I mean, take West Village and East Village in Manhattan. All the hotels are in Midtown, and a lot of travelers just don't want to stay in Midtown.
Right.
So I think it's a different customer. I'm sure there's a lot of blending there and overlap, but I think primarily it's a different customer.
Yeah. No, and I'll jump to Justin in a second here, but it sounds like what you're saying is, but if these didn't exist, what you say about families and whatnot, wanting to stay in a home rather than a hotel, and people wanting to stay in the neighborhood where they want to be, where perhaps there aren't very many hotels. Previously, Randy, what would they have done? They probably would have stayed at hotels and just not been as happy, right?
I don't know. I think you're maybe getting a new type of traveler. So maybe that person wasn't traveling as much, or maybe they were staying in hostels or with friends. I don't know. It's not a very scientific answer, but I don't think I think it's a new type of customer.
Okay. All right. Well, Justin, I'll switch over to you. Having uh, come from hotels, do you think it's truly a different customer, or what would you think about for your like 4-star properties? Would you worry about a 2-star motel, or would they kind of not really have an impact?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and honestly, from the hotel perspective, 4-star, 4-diamond property resorts are not worried about the motel dropping ADR to $69 a night. It's not their same brand. And the upscale hotels are so concerned with their brand name and securing that rate, that high revenue on a nightly basis, that they're not dropping below $300 a night, no matter if their occupancy is at 40%. So I think it's a completely different guest. I think it's a completely different guest, and same thing for the vacation rental perspective. Typically, they're looking for a bigger place with more amenities. They're looking for a property with a kitchen. They're looking for more bedrooms for their kids because they don't want to purchase 3 hotel rooms to accommodate everybody. So I think that's the huge difference between the vacation rental guest and the hotel guest, generally speaking, is they're looking for 2 different things. And that hotel guest wants the front desk. They want the concierge. And they're going to continue to purchase that hotel because they're hotel guests, and that they know what they want, and that's what they're going to get out of a hotel property, generally speaking.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. But what do you buy the argument that the people that really get affected are the kind of smaller motels? Are there more people who are just saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a bed, and I'm looking for the cheapest bed," and usually that's a motel, and now it might be an Airbnb?
Yeah, I think in certain markets you might be right and onto something there. That Motel 6 on the corner might be affected because somebody is renting out a room on Airbnb in a nicer neighborhood for a few dollars more per night, or they have to pay a small cleaning fee to stay there. Instead, I definitely think that they could be affected by that. But all the statistics that we're getting, or feedback that we're getting, at least in Los Angeles, that the hotels are doing fine and nobody's complaining.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so, sorry, I'm gonna get you. So, Randy, I'm going to switch back to you real quick. Sorry about that. A little bit more echo there from you, Justin. Sorry about that. One of the articles there too was Smith Travel Research, which is sort of the hotel's source of a lot of data about occupancy rates and average nightly rates, average daily rates as they call them there, ADR. Did a quick analysis using some of the data that's been made public by, and I forget the website now, there's one out there that's been revealing some of this data on Airbnbs, and they kind of compared the number of units as well as the average nightly rate there, and I think they were trying to say, wow, there's all this unfair competition from Airbnbs, but what I found interesting about it, and we'll post the link in the podcast notes for our viewers afterwards, was that the rates actually, on average, seem to be almost the same between hotels and there. Do you think like there's more? You're starting to get price parity between the two? Is sort of the days of the cheap Airbnb over?
It's an interesting question. I think the early sort of Airbnb host land grab, when there are fewer units available on Airbnb, folks in certain parts of the city could charge what they want. But you definitely, I mean, any marketplace, you start seeing that mellowing of prices, and I think you're starting to see it. There's just a lot more competition among hosts.
Hmm.
And if it is in fact true that the hotels are in direct competition, at least on the lower end, then yeah, you're probably going to see some parity start.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. So one sort of last, before we wrap this up, while we're talking about sort of quality, and this has been interesting, we'll have to dive into this more too with both of you. The New York Times, and I think this might have been the first. Randy, you probably read more of the Times, given that you guys have been in it. But there was kind of a parody, and again, I'll post this for everyone later too. A parody of the typical Airbnb experience, and I'll pull it up and I'll read a little bit of it. And my question, as you listen to it, is sort of, is this accurate? Do you think this is the average Airbnb experience, or is this just a caricature of it? So, in the description, the lady, somebody checks in and she explains all the things about the house, including that. Making sure people parked in the right spot, because if they park in the wrong spot, the ticket's going to be $200, and make sure they don't get don't get towed there. And hey, put your bags down anywhere. Oh, not there. You can't put it in this closet. Then gives them the sort of tour. There's a great line which says, if the water is slow to warm up, just turn the knob back about 45 degrees and flush the toilet with your foot. If that doesn't work, just run down the hall to the laundry room, throw a couple quarters in any washing machine, and run it empty. That always does the trick. And they go on and on about all these things, and kind of I think the takeaway from it is, you are in many instances moving into someone's house, and it's funny, and I know I've had this experience, especially with a home we just got that we haven't yet moved into, but that we had renters for. Is not all houses work as perfectly as hotel rooms, and because it's a home, once you live in your home for a while, if it's truly a home you live in, there's these little quirks. We can't run our washing machine and have hot water at the same time. Things you get used to, but I think a lot of hosts maybe don't think about that when they have guests coming. Randy, what do you? I know this is a totally different segment. This is an entirely different segment probably than Justin manages right now. But for those people who are truly renting out their homes, either a private room or just every now and then while they're away, you know, do you think this is typical? Are all those little quirks something that should that person just not rent out their place, or is this something that guests need to just get used to and understand about when they're actually renting out a lived-in home?
Me or Justin?
Yeah, I'll go to you, Randy.
I think this is a hilarious article. It's funny, it's sarcastic. I don't think it reflects the actual Airbnb experience.
Yeah.
Sure, I think some homes and people that are literally sharing the home while they're in it. I'm sure everyone's got their quirks. Everyone's had roommates, right?
Yeah.
This is sort of like a roommate scenario, which a lot of folks certainly rent their room out in their home. I think every home is different, as you mentioned. Every home has its quirks, and unless you live in it all the time, there's some you get used to, and some you think are fine to live with. I think again it goes back to setting expectations and also communicating clearly ahead of time what those are, good and bad, or not even good and bad, but just hey, here's kind of how this place works.
Yeah.
And I think most people when they go into particularly cities, right? You've got these old apartment buildings with these old apartments, and they're old, and a lot of landlords or even the homeowners, the actual homeowners and the co-ops haven't updated things in years and years and years, and so you get some funky apartments. Barring sort of crazy things where this guy mentioned the smell of cat urine and stuff like that, or I don't, that one article that the guy was sort of talking about is the Paris apartment. I think that's rare, honestly, and I just think that again it goes back to that sort of 1/100th of 1% of the experiences.
Yeah.
But I think by and large, this is not sort of accurately reflecting the experience on either side.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree there, and I think, Andy, you have the experience with marketplaces and eBay and all of that, right? And part of making sense out of the madness, right, is creating the right signals for people and surfacing things in the right order for people to guide them towards the places that are most likely to meet their expectations, right?
Yeah, and I also think there's certainly responsibility on both sides in this. It's a hotel room is what it is, right? And because we've all stayed in hotel rooms, we know it. It's a known quantity there. When it's someone's home, I think both the sort of the buyer and the seller, if you will, need to communicate and find the fit. It's not a sort of a you don't just walk into any of these blindly. Everyone still needs to do their homework, just as you would buy an item on eBay. You look at the reviews and you make your own judgment, and you communicate, and you got to get a feel for the person you're renting your place to, or vice versa. And I think most people tend to do that, but to expect that it's going to be exactly what you thought it would be if you've done no research, well, that's sort of on you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And so I'm going to finish with sort of a question for both of you guys. And related to that, it's definitely not cookie cutter. And in a certain way, that'll appeal to some people, right? It's a unique experience when you stay at a vacation rental, when you stay at an Airbnb. But, we saw sort of back, 30 years ago, this proliferation of Hiltons and Marriotts and all of this, and this desire to sort of have consistency in the quality and to know what you're going to get, right? This was why, chains of all sorts and franchises of all sorts sort of took over. So the question really is, do you think that will continue, or will people opt for the boutique more? And if they are, what do you think at maturity, what percentage of people eventually will stay in Airbnbs versus, let's just say, versus hotels, if those were the two options? Do you think it'll max out at 10% of the accommodation market? I think most estimates are Airbnb's between 1 and 2% right now in terms of nights booked versus hotels. Do you think it maxes at 10? Does it get to 50? Randy, what do you think?
I'm a little more sort of aggressive in what I think at some point it's 40-50%.
Wow.
The reason I say that is that as more and more people recognize that they have an idle asset where they can make some extra money on, and if it's in decent shape and it's an interesting place, interesting home or apartment in an interesting city, or even a traditional vacation rental market, I think hotels have sort of been the only option, and then you have traditional B&Bs and the middle ground. I just think there's going to be more and more and more of it as people get more comfortable with it.
Got it. And so you think the trend there will be people start getting more comfortable with it. It's a better experience, and as they get more comfortable with the variation, it'll get up to 40 or 50%.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe that's a sort of a big number. I see that
We'll put
5-10 years.
We'll put a 5-year mark on this, and we'll bet a sushi dinner on it. How's that sound?
You're on.
All right. Well, so Justin, same thing for you, especially with your background in hotels. Where do you think it caps out?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think 40 to 50% is certainly aggressive. I don't know that it'll go to that percentage, but I do agree with Randy that further down the road, more and more people are going to access and see what else is out there. And I don't know that those corporate clients that are traveling 50, 75% of their year, I don't know that they're going to start using Airbnb or vacation rentals. I think they'll always enjoy their points and their status staying at their Marriott property. But I do think, especially with the younger generations, more and more people are going to access an Airbnb or vacation rental, and that's going to change the game. That's going to spread the word more, and it definitely will grow, maybe, in my opinion, to 20-25% over the next 10 years, but there still will be that popular hotel chain. There still will be that Hilton or Marriott that people will enjoy staying at because they know what they're going to get, and some people don't like change.
That's a good point. And then there's, you mentioned the business traveler. I know myself, when I was traveling every single week, I was addicted to Starwood points, right? So in this scenario, you say in 2025, you got Randy saying 40 to 50%. From the hotel side, who do you think, whose market share will be eaten up? Is it going to be across the board there? Is it going to be low end? Is it going to be high end? Is it going to be independents? Is it going to be chains? Who do you think will suffer, or whose market share will get eaten up there?
I think maybe the low end market could get a hit, receive a hit eventually over time. I don't think the high-end luxury hotels are really going to see a hit because I think it's a different type of guest. I really do. And I don't think they'll receive a hit, but I do think the low-end market might take a significant hit over the next 10 years. But from what I hear right now, that's not the case. What do you think, Randy?
Agree on the high end. I think the high end sort of buffered from a lot of this because they still, offer a unique experience at a premium, but certainly with amenities that go a long way. I think the low end upper low end will feel it because they're not really offering anything unique. And I think even today's business traveler wants something unique. You look at what Airbnb they're pushing into the business traveler sector really hard because they know that there's a huge opportunity there. But having been a business traveler for years myself, I staying in a Sheraton, it just But if there's a place that I could stay in the city that's in an interesting neighborhood while I'm there, I'd take that any day. And I think that's the business travelers is it's still early, but I think they're starting to get there.
Interesting. Now, and I'll go back. I'll finish with Justin, but Randy, while I got you here, especially since your company is based in New York, where do you think, obviously hotels, and if you're taking 40-50% market share, hotels won't sit idly by. And we've already seen Hyatt invest in One Fine Stay, which is kind of the high end of managed short-term rentals. What do you think? How do you think the hotels will respond?
I think the smart hotels are seeing a new opportunity in this. They're seeing something that, one, they don't quite understand yet, and they don't have a solution for. And so, like Hyatt, you'd mentioned with One Fine Stay, they're looking to provide to a really valuable customer another alternative experience. And it's not that they lose that customer. I think they enhance their overall experience and value to that consumer by giving them some new options there. So I think the smart ones start actually getting into this space
Yeah.
in a real way.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And then I'll kick it to you, Justin, related to that. As the hotels get into it and their deal with One Fine Stay, it kind of says, hey, hotels have always adapted, right? When boutique brands became popular and Joy de Vivre and Kimpton kind of were coming up, we saw a lot of the big hotel chains just say, okay, got it, this is the trend. We're going to develop our own boutique brand. Justin, how do you think they're going to respond? Do you think that they'll just sort of do the same that they've done before and just open up a kind of a new short-term rental focused brand?
I think the hotels are always going to adapt as they have over the years. So I don't think that'll change, but I think ultimately what they're going to have to do is give their guests more options and a different experience. And if that's really a different experience or selling the experience, like the vacation rental and Airbnb brand is doing, I think that's ultimately what they're going to have to do is just give their guests or potential guests more options, give bigger suites and rooms with kitchens and sell the experience at their property versus just offering standard hotel rooms like they've always done over the years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was wondering, when is the time when you're going to see ads for hotels saying, hammering on those points that they always like to hammer on about why they're different, and on the one side, like you said, they'll adapt and it won't be as cookie cutter. On the other side, I think they probably have this ability to remind people why they're different and who they appeal to, right? They show the imagery of you checking in and having all these people waiting on you, all those sorts of things that you expect from a full service hotel to differentiate themselves. But it's interesting. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to put my number in. This is, obviously all of our businesses hinge on this, but I'm thinking it's going to top out at about 10%. That's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to put a sushi dinner on that. So we'll all get back together in 5 years, and we'll see who buys. Cool. Well, this has been an awesome episode. This is our best episode ever. Incredible discussion. Thank you, both of our guests, for coming on here and sharing their insights. Hopefully it's been useful to everybody that's listening. As always, you can subscribe we're all on iTunes now, so just search for us on iTunes, and you can subscribe and make sure you don't miss an episode. And you can also find us on SoundCloud, and then also on YouTube as well, where we do these things live via Hangout. So that's it for now. I'll switch over to Randy. Randy, you got anything to plug about Properly?
We're short-term rental management for Airbnb hosts in New York City, and essentially take care of all the hassles around that, so hosts don't have to.
Definitely. Yep. And if you're in Manhattan, go ahead and check those guys out. They are one of the earliest to do this. Awesome business. Randy's really a pioneer on figuring out how you run a a distributed hospitality team. So definitely check them out. Justin, we'll switch over to you. You got anything?
Yeah, I would love to welcome homeowners who have an investment property in Los Angeles or looking to generate more revenue out of their property. I encourage them to contact me and our company, AE Hospitality. And I also encourage everybody in Los Angeles, in the area, please check out the Los Angeles short-term rental lines. Go online, check out Lostra, get familiar with some of the regulations that are on the books currently and what we're trying to do in the area, just to help everybody out with regulation and professionally managed properties in Los Angeles.
Awesome, perfect. And I'll include links to Lostra as well as to AE Hospitality in the show notes so you guys can see all of that. Well, awesome. This is a wonderful episode of This Week in Airbnb and Beyond, and thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week.